Okay, I need to get out of there. Oops.
Hola y bienvenidos. Me llamo Jen Eleana. Estoy aquí con mi cointérprete Alexia para interpretar entre inglés y español. Estamos aquí con colegas que interpretan al armenio, ruso y tailandés que se presentarán en un momento.
Hi and welcome. My name is Jen Eleana. I am here with my co-interpreter Alexia to interpret between English and Spanish. We are here with colleagues who are interpreting into Armenian, Russian, and Thai, and will introduce themselves in a moment.
Ողջույն, իմ անունը Հայկ է։ Ես այստեղ եմ իմ համաթարգմանիչ Մաշինկայի հետ հայերենի եւ անգլերենի միջև թարգմանելու համար։ Մենք այստեղ ենք համագործակիցների հետ, որոնք թարգմանում են թայերեն, ռուսերեն եւ իսպաներեն։
Здравствуйте, добро пожаловать. Меня зовут Константин. Вместе с моим коллегой Александром мы будем переводить с английского языка на русский и наоборот. Переводчики других языков – испанского, армянского и тайского – вскоре также представят или уже представили себя.
สวัสดีค่ะดิฉันจิราอนงแมนโซและเพื่อนร่วมทีมเบญจวรรณภูมิแสนจะมาช่วยแปลภาษาให้คุณในวันนี้ระหว่างอังกฤษและไทยเราและเพื่อนร่วมทีมอื่นๆจะแปลเป็นภาษาอาร์เมเนียรัสเซียและไทยอีกสักครู่จะมาแนะนำตัวกันค่ะ
La justicia del lenguaje incluye el compromiso de asegurarnos de que todas las personas puedan participar en la conversación y un respeto para los derechos lingüísticos de todas las comunidades.
Language justice includes a commitment to making sure everyone can participate in the conversation and a respect for the language rights of all communities.
Լեզվի արդարության առաքելություններից են քննարկման մեջ բոլորի մասնակցությունը ապահովելն ու հարգանքը բոլոր համայնքների լեզվային իրավունքների հանդեպ։
Понятие лингвистической справедливости заключается в обеспечении всем возможности участвовать в дискуссии, а также в проявлении уважения к правам касательно языка общения для всего населения.
Language justice ทุ่มเทให้แน่ใจว่าผู้เข้าร่วมทุกท่านสามารถเข้าร่วมสนทนาได้เราเคารพในสิทธิทางภาษาของทุกชุมชนค่ะ
Mi cointérprete y yo estamos en tierra tongva no cedida, donde el pueblo y el idioma tongva siguen en resistencia.
My co-interpreter and I are on unceded Tongva territory where the Tongva people and language continue in resistance.
Իմ համաթարգմանիչն ու ես չզիծված տոնգվա հողի վրա ենք, որտեղ տոնգվա ժողովուրդը եւ լեզուն շարունակում են իրենց գոյությունն ու գոյութենական դիմադրությունը։
Мой партнер-переводчик и я пребываем на несданной территории Тонгвы, народ и язык, который продолжает борьбу за свое существование.
เพื่อนล่ามและตัวดิฉันเองอยู่ในดินแดนทองกวาที่ไม่เคยถูกยกให้ใครที่ซึ่งชาวทองกวาและภาษาทองกวายังคงไม่ได้รับการยอมรับ
Quisiera reconocer todos los idiomas que se usan aquí. El evento de hoy tomará lugar en inglés, con interpretación al español, armenio, ruso y tailandés, usando la función de interpretación de Zoom que ya se ha activado. Ahora les explicaré cómo puede elegir un canal de idioma si prefiere escuchar la interpretación.
We want to acknowledge all the languages used by everyone here. Today's event will be held in English with interpreting into Spanish, Armenian, Russian, and Thai using the Zoom interpreting function, which has already been activated. Now I will explain how you can choose a language channel if you prefer to listen to the interpreting.
Ես ուզում եմ իմ հարգանքի տուրք մատուցել այստեղ գտնվողների օգտագործած բոլոր լեզուները։ Այսօրվա միջոցառումն անցկացվելու է անգլերեն լեզվով, իսպաներենի, հայերենի, ռուսերենի եւ թայերենի թարգմանությամբ, օգտագործելով Zoom-ի արդեն ակտիվացրած թարգմանության միջոցը։ Այժմ ես կբացատրեմ, թե ինչպես կարող եք ընտրել լեզվի ալիք, եթե նախընտրում եք լսել թարգմանությունը։
Я хочу выразить мое уважение носителям всех языков, присутствующим здесь. Сегодняшнее мероприятие будет проводиться на английском языке с синхронным переводом на испанский, армянский, русский и тайский языки. Синхронный перевод предоставляется путем использования специальной гарнитуры перевода в приложении Zoom. Эта функция в приложении Zoom уже активизирована. Если вы предпочитаете слушать синхронный перевод, я сейчас объясню вам, как этой гарнитурой воспользоваться.
เราให้เกียรติทุกภาษาในที่นี้ในวันนี้เราจะนำเสนอเป็นภาษาอังกฤษและจะมีการแปลเป็นภาษาสเปนอาร์เมเนียรัสเซียและไทยโดยใช้ฟังก์ชันการแปลของ Zoom ซึ่งได้เปิดใช้งานแล้วตอนนี้เราจะอธิบายให้ทราบว่าจะเลือกช่องภาษาอย่างไรนะคะถ้าต้องการฟังเสียงล่าม
Si usa una computadora, verá un icono del mundo en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Si usa una tableta o teléfono, pulse en más y verá un menú que incluye la opción de interpretación de idiomas. Para escuchar la interpretación, pulse el icono del mundo o interpretación de idiomas. A continuación, elija su canal de idioma. Si está en un teléfono o tableta, haga clic en Listo. Si no puede escuchar la interpretación en su canal, por favor, pida ayuda en el chat o levante la mano.
If you are using a computer, you will see a globe icon at the bottom of your screen. If you are on a tablet or phone, click on More, and you will see a menu that includes an option called Language Interpretation. To listen to the interpreting, click on the globe icon or Language Interpretation. Then choose your language channel. If you are using a phone or a tablet, click where it says Done. And if you cannot hear the interpreter on your channel, please ask for help in the chat or raise your hand.
Եթե օգտվում եք համակարգչից, ձեր էկրանի ներքևում կտեսնեք մոլորակի, այսինքն գլոբուսի նշան։ Եթե պլանշետից կամ հեռախոսից եք օգտվում, սեղմեք More, այսինքն ավելին, տարբերակի վրա եւ կտեսնեք ընտրացանք, որը ներառում է Language Interpretation, այսինքն լեզվի թարգմանություն տարբերակը։ Թարգմանությունը լսելու համար սեղմեք գլոբուսի պատկերի կամ Language Interpretation, այսինքն լեզվի թարգմանություն կոճակի վրա, ապա ընտրեք ձեր նախընտրած լեզվի ալիքը։ Եթե հեռախոս կամ պլանշետ եք օգտագործում, սեղմեք Done, այսինքն ավարտեցի կոճակը։ Եթե ձեր լեզվային ալիքում չեք կարող լսել թարգմանչին, խնդրում ենք օգնություն խնդրել զրուցարանում, այսինքն չաթում, կամ բարձրացնել ձեր ձեռքը, օգտագործել ձեռք բարձրացման ֆունկցիան։
Если вы используете компьютер, в нижней части экрана вы увидите изображение глобуса. Если вы используете планшет или мобильный телефон, кликните по надписи «Больше» More и увидите дополнительное меню, в котором одной из опций будет перевод Language Interpretation. Чтобы услышать синхронный перевод, кликните по изображению глобуса или выберите опцию «Перевод» Language Interpretation, а затем выберите соответствующий языковой канал. Если вы используете планшет или мобильный телефон, кликните также «Готово» Done. Если вы не слышите переводчика на вашем языковом канале, пожалуйста, попросите помощь в чате или поднимите вашу руку.
ถ้าใช้คอมพิวเตอร์คุณจะเห็นไอคอนรูปโลกซึ่งอยู่ด้านล่างของหน้าจอของคุณถ้าใช้โทรศัพท์หรือแท็บเล็ตคลิกที่ More แล้วคุณจะเห็นตัวเลือก Language Interpretation ถ้าต้องการฟังเสียงล่ามให้คลิกที่ลูกโลกหรือตัวเลือก Language Interpretation แล้วเลือกภาษาที่คุณต้องการนะคะถ้าใช้โทรศัพท์หรือแท็บเล็ตคลิกที่ Done ซึ่งหมายถึงว่าเสร็จเรียบร้อยแล้วถ้าไม่ได้ยินเสียงล่ามในห้องนั้นติดต่อขอความช่วยเหลือได้ในแชทหรือยกมือขึ้นนะคะ
Ahora vamos a comenzar la interpretación simultánea y haremos una prueba de la función de interpretación.
Now we will start simultaneous interpreting and we will test the interpreting function.
Հիմա մենք կսկսենք միաժամանակ թարգմանությունը եւ կտեստավորենք թարգմանության ֆունկցիան։
Сейчас я говорю на английском языке. Перевод можно услышать, и мы начнем сейчас перевод по каналам синхронного перевода.
ตอนนี้เราจะเริ่มการแปลพร้อมและจะทดสอบการทำงานส่วนการแปลค่ะ
Now, I am speaking in English. The interpreting can be heard on the Spanish, Armenian, Russian, and Thai channels. I'm going to ask our amazing in-language support team to give me a thumbs up if you can hear the interpreting on all the channels. And please turn on your video so I can see your thumbs up. I'm wondering if folks can hear. I can see that Thai can be heard. I'm looking for a thumbs up from Spanish, wonderful, and Armenian and Russian. And to see that, I need to see someone on the screen, because this is about, thank you very much, Harry, making sure that everyone present can have access to the same info as everyone else. So thank you, Harry. I'm seeing that you're on the Russian channel as well. Now, everyone who prefers to hear the interpreting should be on a language channel. People who understand English can keep the interpreting function turned off if they prefer. If you're listening to the interpreters, you can click mute original audio to hear only your language channel. Otherwise, you will hear the original speaker and the interpretation at the same time. If you can't hear the interpreting at any point, please don't suffer in silence. Use the chat to ask for help. Thank you so much to Stay Housed LA for your commitment to language justice. We are so pleased to be able to support this multilingual space in solidarity with the struggle for housing justice. And now the webinar can begin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bill Przlecki. I am the Executive Director of POWER, People Organized for Westside Renewal, and I will be moderating tonight's event. As we get started, I want to just thank all of the co-hosting organizations that put in all of the work to help make this happen. Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles is our legal services partner for tonight. Our organization, POWER, along with Coalition for Economic Survival, are community-based organizations that work to bring this together. And then we have the Office of Supervisor Sheila Kuehl and the LA County Consumer and Business Affairs Department, as well as the LA City Housing Department, or LAHD. So thank you to all of our co-hosting organizations. So we're going to have tonight a renters' rights webinar. And sorry, am I introducing the video now? I think we're going to go to the video. So we have a message first from Supervisor Sheila Kuehl. Let's play her message.
Hi, I'm LA County Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, and I want to thank you very much for being here this evening. Over the next 90 minutes, you'll learn about the protections currently in place for residential and commercial renters. The pandemic has imposed some real hardships on renters, as well as business tenants, mom and pop landlords, but programs and assistance are available that can help take some of the sting out of the last 18 months. So tonight you'll learn more about those programs and hear from some of LA's most trusted community and legal groups. They have been partnering with LA County's Department of Consumer and Business Affairs to help you get through this very difficult period. So I want to thank all of our county partners as well. Their efforts have been so important in keeping county families in their homes. So let's get to the main attraction. There's lots of important information to come.
Great, thank you Supervisor Kuehl, for joining us through video tonight.
Hi, I'm LA County Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, and
Yeah. So we're just going to really briefly explain what is Stay Housed LA. It's a partnership between the county and the city of Los Angeles, as well as local community organizations like CES and POWER, and legal services providers like Neighborhood Legal Services. And together, we are here to provide information and resources to help keep people in their homes. So tonight on our webinar, we're going to cover a few key questions that we hope will help answer the most pressing questions that you're here to get answered tonight. I'm just going to name right now We do have a Q&A function, so if you have questions, you can type them in, and at the end of the webinar, we'll get into those. But the 3 questions that we're going to cover in our presentation is, what do we do if we can't pay the rent? Can I be evicted? And how can Stay Housed LA help? So that's going to be our agenda for tonight. And then at the end of that information, we'll go over the Q&A. So first, let's start with, what do we do if we can't pay my rent? And for this, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Salma from Coalition for Economic Survival.
Hi everyone, my name is Salma Rojas and I work with Coalition for Economic Survival as the Affordable Housing Tenant Organizer. CS is a grassroots tenants' rights organization that is one of the community-based organizations working in collaboration with Stay Housed LA, and I will be co-moderating tonight. So I will be leading us through the first question, which is, what do I do if I cannot pay rent? This portion of the presentation will discuss some of the resources and protections for tenants who cannot pay rent. So if you cannot pay rent, there are several things that you can do to protect yourself. First, you can apply for rental assistance, and we will get into the specifics of the rental assistance programs later in this presentation. Second, under California state law, if you cannot pay rent, you must submit a declaration to your landlord each month you cannot pay rent. Third, you must also know when your rent is due. Depending on where you are in California, there are different due dates for when your rent is due. For example, the due date for paying back missed rent in LA County is different from the due date for the city of Los Angeles. So what exactly does rental assistance mean for tenants in California? In the state of California, the government is able to cover missed rent and utility payments for eligible tenants until they run out of money to do so. So if you are eligible, you can apply for this rental assistance to help with your missed rent and utility payments. You are eligible for rental assistance if you've been impacted by COVID-19, are income eligible, have unpaid rent or utilities, or need help with future rent or utilities. You are also eligible, and if you are eligible, you can apply for up to 100% of the rent owed since April 2020, plus future rent owed for up to 18 months or March 2023, whichever is sooner. Also, something super great about California's rental assistance is that it's available to everyone, regardless of their immigration status. And we also really want to stress to you all that you should not count yourself out. You may think you don't qualify, but we still want you to apply if you need assistance. For example, if you are receiving CalFresh, you are likely eligible. And you may be wondering, why bother going through the process of applying? Well, there are several reasons you should apply. First, which seems kind of obvious, you should apply to rental assistance so you can get help paying your rent. Second, if you apply for rental assistance, you may be more protected from getting evicted. One of the ways you are more protected is that if your landlord tried to evict you for not paying your rent, they have to prove that you applied for rental assistance and were denied in order to move forward with an eviction. If your landlord cannot prove this, they may not be able to move forward with an eviction. Also, if your landlord tried to evict you before you receive rental assistance, you can delay the court hearing until you receive the assistance payment. Okay, so now we're going to be hearing from Jessica Hayes, the disaster recovery branch chief at the California Department of Housing and Community Development. She'll be going more into detail about the state of California's rental relief program.
Thank you very much, Salma. I appreciate that. We'll talk a little bit about the state of California's program. This is the California COVID-19 Rent Relief Program. This is the program that is assisting most of the households in Los Angeles County, including the city of Los Angeles. We started serving the city last week, and we are very excited to have city residents be a part of the program. So talking a little bit about the program, the state program launched our portal back on March 15th. The program focus is to help households stay housed. We want to help prevent evictions. We have actually over 123, the slide says 115, but we have updates, partners that work with us to help people get applications submitted. And we have already paid out over $425 million to households in the state of California who have asked for assistance. Talking a little bit about what is required in the program. The rent relief provides assistance for unpaid rent that has accrued after April 1st, 2020. It includes rent for current rents. So if a household needs assistance now, they can request that assistance. And it provides prospective rents up to 3 months. So a household can request assistance for the next 3 months. These can all be done in one request. A household may also request assistance for unpaid past due utilities. We pay 100% of what is requested. Non-occupancy, if a household has left their unit and has debt against that unit, they can request assistance. They should get their landlord to participate so that we can make payment, but we can help get rid of that back debt. And if a tenant does receive funds directly because their landlord is not participating, they are obligated by law to make payment to their landlord within 15 days of the receipt of funds. Talking about eligibility and prioritization. So in order to be eligible, a household must meet a few criteria. That includes that their income, so they must be income below 80% of the area median income by county. And so that information is tracked in the application. You do not have to know that. The application will help you determine whether or not you are eligible. The household has to have some sort of housing instability. That can be a risk of homelessness, but it also can be an inability to pay rents, whether those are past rents or current rents. And then there has to be some impact from COVID-19. It can be a direct impact, it can be an indirect impact, and this can be identified by a checkbox on the application itself. There is no proof of citizenship or immigration status required to participate. We don't even ask. So everyone is open and welcome to come join the program. We prioritize based on households who are at most risk of eviction. There's even a box on the application to identify if your landlord has initiated an eviction proceeding. That helps us to prioritize to make sure we keep households housed. And then, as I mentioned, eligible uses, we pay for rent arrears, current rents, prospective rents, utilities, and there are options for other housing services. We even do referrals for households who are experiencing homelessness or who are at risk of homelessness. So how to apply? You can go to housingiskey.com, and this website will help you to apply to any program in the state, because while the state does manage the programs for LA County and LA City, there are programs in other places in the state, such as San Diego County or Riverside County, where you have to apply to a specific local program. Housing is Key can take you to any of those programs. The website is translated. It is in several languages, so you can actually go into the website in your language to receive assistance. And all of our documents, resources, and materials have been translated to provide assistance to make sure that households can find the information that they need. So when you are going into the Housing is Key website, if you click the apply button, it takes you to our mapping tool. Our mapping tool will make it so that you don't have to figure out what program you need to apply to. It will take you directly to the correct program for you. Just put your address in the box at the top, hit the search button, and it will give you a link that will take you to the appropriate program. You can follow that link and then apply as necessary. If it takes you to the state program, we're glad to have you. And we look forward to helping you complete your application, get your information to us so that we can assist you and help make sure that you can stay housed. So a little bit about what you'll need to have with you when you get ready to start an application. And this is true no matter what program you apply to. If you're a landlord, you'll need one of the following. You will need a lease or rental agreement, and or you will need a rent ledger, and or you will need a W-9. So you'll need to make sure that you have that information ready. The W-9 is a tax document. You'll need to make sure you have that information ready to start your application. If you are a renter, you just need a little bit of information. You need something that shows your income. So that could be a 2020 tax return. That could be a W-2 or a 1099-G, so those tax forms. It could be a pay stub. It could be proof of participation in another program, such as CalFresh. You can also attest to your income. So if you don't have income documentation, you can come to the program and we will help. There is an option to attest to your income in the application, and there are resources to help explain how that works. If you're asking for assistance with utilities, we will need your utility bills. So you'll want to make sure you have those handy. That should be all the information you need. If we need more information from you, we'll reach out to you and ask for that information. So when if there are any issues, any questions on your application, we will reach out to you and you will have a case manager who will reach out and explain what we need. A little bit about the pathways so that people can understand how these application processes work. Either the tenant or the landlord initiates the application. Depending on who starts the application, the other party gets a notification. They can then go in and start to put their portion of the information in. If a landlord does not participate in the program, so if your landlord chooses not to participate, that's okay. A tenant can get assistance anyway. If a tenant chooses not to participate, there is no way to assist that landlord. So if your landlord has started an application, we really encourage people to complete their portion of the application. We want to help as many people as possible, and we have resources available to assist. So we're going to talk about those in just a moment. So there's a few things we've done to make our program run more smoothly. These were things that we received feedback on, and we continue to improve the program based on feedback. So if you have concerns or if you have issues in the program as you are trying to work through your application, let us know. We will do our best to help make sure that everyone has access to assistance. We've simplified our application, we've updated our website, and we continue to add languages to our website. And we've tried to make things easier to navigate. So we look forward to feedback from anyone who is having challenges, and we appreciate the participation from everyone coming into the program with us. As I mentioned, here's some resources for people who are looking for assistance in the program. The first number is our call center. That's 1-833-430-2122. You can call that number. We have translation services available. We also have language speakers to assist, and they will give you information about application status, how to get into the application, how to reset your password, how to get just general program information, and where to find resources on the website. If you need assistance in completing an application, you can call our appointment center and make an appointment with one of our local partners. That phone number is 1-833-687-0967. You can call that number and make an appointment. They do appointments over phone, or they do appointments in person. There may be a slight wait right now for appointments in person. We are adding more program partners as we go, so we hope to get that wait time down. But they can help make sure that you have all the information you need and can help you submit an application. You can use the map, as we mentioned, to look up which program you belong to. You can also look at the statistics of the program. So we have a public dashboard that tells us how much money has gone out the door and how many households we've assisted. And you can break that down by county and into some cities. So we encourage folks to take a look at that information to see how the program is performing. And then if you want to find a specific local partner, or if you would like to become a local partner, and we are always taking local partner applications, you can access that information from our local partner organization lookup. You can also reach out to us at HCD, or you can call the call center number, let folks know you are looking to be a local partner. We will get you an application. We would love to have you join our team. And we have our comments and questions slide. Please feel free to reach out to us. We are always looking for more feedback. And thank you. And I think this is my last slide. So Bill, I can turn this back over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. So we're going to wrap up. We're going to move towards wrapping up the section about what do we do if I can't pay my rent now. So if you have applied for rental assistance from the City of Los Angeles in the past, you can check the status of your application and find more information at housing2.lacity.org. It's the website that's on the slide that's up right now. So right now we're just going to go over these three steps that you can see. If you can not pay your rent, what must you do? So right now we're gonna show you how to do all three. We'll start with number one, apply for rental assistance. You must submit a declaration to your landlord for every month between March 2020 and September 2021 that you cannot pay your rent. So again, any month that you could not pay your full rent, you have to submit that declaration each time. It's redundant in a certain sense, but that means that once you do it the first time, you know how to do it. Keep doing it for every month. And then go to stayhousedla.org and print the declaration with instructions if you need help figuring out how to do that declaration. There's a sample declaration available. Mark the boxes for any month you've not paid from March 2020 through June 2021. Fill it out and sign it. So send by mail with video proof and proof of mailing, and or put it in a Dropbox with video proof and via email. The point of all this is we're going to document all the ways to make sure that we can prove that we sent that declaration. Each month for February 2021 through June 2021 that you cannot pay, send a new declaration for just that 1 month by your rent due date or as soon as possible. If your landlord gives you a 15-day notice, send your landlord a declaration for each month of unpaid rent demanded. Each month that that notice is for, send them a declaration for that month. Apply for rental assistance if you need it. You can do that again. We just went over that. Dial 211. This is an example of what a declaration looks like. Now we're going to go over how to, we went over how to submit your declaration. So now we need to go over when your rent is due. I just want to clarify something just from the chat real quick. The slide said June 2021, but it's actually through September 2021. So it's up through right now. So when is rent owed due? If you live in the city of Los Angeles, your rent owed between March 1st, 2020 and September 30th, 2021 is due by May 31st, 2023. And that date is dependent upon the end of the emergency order. So the way that the cities program the actual legal wording, rent will be due 12 months after the end of the state of emergency. Sorry, can you just go back to the English slide so I can make sure I get the county one right? Thank you. For unincorporated and incorporated LA County, your rent owed between March 1st, 2020 and September 30th, 2021 is due before September 30th, 2021. So by the end of this month. What do we expect after September 30th, 2021? So as of October 1st, that's the end of this month, the beginning of the next month, if you have not paid rent and you've not submitted a declaration or have not paid 25%, then you are not protected from eviction. Starting October 1st, 2021, tenants in LA County and City can receive a 15-day notice if you've not taken the above steps. Starting October 2nd, tenants in the county and the city of Los Angeles can receive a 3-day notice if they don't pay the rent in October. So can I be evicted right now? We're going to answer this question. This is question number 2. And for this, I'm going to pass it over to Henry. Take it away, Henry.
Thank you, Bo. I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. My name is Henry Mantell. I am an eviction defense attorney with Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County. And I'm going to give a quick presentation on the eviction process and what you can expect and what you should do in the event that you start going through an eviction. And the most important question is, can I be evicted right now? Yes, you absolutely can be evicted right now. There are very strong protections for tenants due to COVID, but your landlord can still try to evict you during this time. It is not a blanket ban on evictions. So what we're going to review is what to do if you get an eviction notice, the eviction process, and then I will turn it over for the emergency tenant protections. So if you do receive an eviction notice, the first thing is do not move out of your home immediately. I highly recommend seeking legal counsel immediately. You can go to stayhousedla.org and request a legal referral. And some notices require a response by a certain deadline. If they do, then you should do your best to try to respond. But step 1 should always be seek legal counsel. Now we're going to go over the eviction process. So step by step, the eviction process is typically it varies, but it always starts with a written notice to quit from a landlord to a tenant. It can be a 3-day or 15-day or 30 or 60 or 90-day, but it has to start with a written notice. And if a tenant remains in their home after the notice expires and they have not responded to the notice, then a landlord can file what's called an unlawful detainer, which is basically the legal term for an eviction. And if they do file an unlawful detainer in court, they have to serve the tenant with a summons and the complaint. So when you receive the summons, that means that your landlord has filed an eviction against you in court. And it's at this point, if you haven't found legal counsel yet, you should. Now, the worst thing you can do after receiving a summons and complaint is nothing. Because if you receive a summons and complaint and you do not file an answer to that summons, your landlord can file a request for a default. And if you haven't filed an answer, then a default judgment will be entered against you, and the landlord can apply for possession, and you will receive a 5-day notice to vacate from the sheriff's department, and then the sheriff will show up and evict you. Now, I want to address the asterisks in between two of these steps. If a default judgment is entered, it is possible to file a motion to set aside the default and the default judgment, but this can be difficult because you typically, in order for this to be granted, you have to show that you could not have known about the complaint and simply did not know that you had to file an answer. So unless there is, so if you receive the summons and you didn't file an answer, typically this won't be granted. So the point is, file an answer if you get a summons. Do not ignore it. Now, because if you do file an answer, then you can have your day in court and you'll have a chance to defend yourself. The first thing you should know is that it is always possible to settle an unlawful detainer. Typically, once an eviction has been filed in court, that most tenants at that point are okay with moving out because any kind of friendly relationship between the tenant and the landlord is basically over. So if you want to settle the case, you can agree to move out given 30 or 60 days and ask for the record sealed so that you don't have an eviction on your record. But if you want to take it to court, you can. A trial date will be set and you will have your chance to go to trial. If you win at trial, then you can stay. Your judgment will be entered in your favor and you'll be able to stay. If you lose, then a judgment will be entered for the landlord, and then you'll receive a 5-day notice to vacate from the sheriff's office, and the sheriff will come to evict you, and you will have that eviction on your record. So if you want to fight to stay, I definitely highly recommend seeking legal counsel again. So that is the eviction process in a nutshell. Now I get to turn it over to Verdiana Velez, who is the Senior Policy Analyst for the LA County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Henry. Good evening, everyone. My name is Verdiana, and I'm with the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. I'm going to be talking about the LA County emergency tenant protections that were established by board action. These protections can help you if you are facing an eviction action. So again, as mentioned earlier, landlords are still able to file eviction actions against you, but these protections can help you if that situation happens to you. So the protections apply to unincorporated areas of the county, as well as all incorporated cities. So this is as of September 1st of 2020. The LA County Board of Supervisors extended these protections to all incorporated cities. Now, if your city has stronger protections than what the county offers, those still apply, but essentially this created a baseline level of protection. So at a minimum, you have the county's protections there for you. And these apply to residential tenants, commercial tenants, and mobile home space renters. So the protections are currently effective from March 4th, 2020 through September 30th of 2021, unless of course they are extended or repealed by the Board of Supervisors. Now, for residential tenants, the county did have a protection for you if you were unable to pay your rent, late charges, or any fees if you were impacted by COVID-19. Now, these protections were only available until September 30th of 2020. Don't worry, if this situation applies to you, you are still protected and have recourse if you are facing an eviction action, but you're covered under the state's protections that Jessica mentioned earlier in the presentation. So as of October 1, 2020, you are still covered if you're unable to pay your rent due to a COVID-19 financial hardship. You're just covered under the state's protections and not the county's. That only applies to residential tenants. If you're a commercial tenant, the state's protections don't apply to you. So you've been protected by the county's protections this whole time. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because if you had unpaid rent between March 4th of 2020 and September 30th of 2020, you didn't have to meet the state's requirements for protections, meaning paying that 25% minimum threshold each month for rent and submitting that declaration of hardship. Simply telling your landlord that you were unable to pay rent, either verbally or in writing during those months, protected you from an eviction action. So I wanted to reemphasize that because if you're facing any kind of eviction action, the time period of when you owed rent affects the kind of documentation and payment requirements that were applicable to you during that time. So for residential tenants, the county also had other types of actions that were restricted. So these include if you had to temporarily house additional occupants or pets due to COVID-19, nuisance or denying entry to your landlord, or a no-fault eviction reason, including substantial remodels, demolitions, or LS Act evictions. Now, those specific eviction actions, those protections don't necessarily apply if anything was causing a health or safety threat to other tenants in the building. So that is just a note that those actions might have still been applicable if that was happening. There's also a rent freeze on rent stabilized units in unincorporated areas of the county. So these are not applicable to incorporated cities. Your city might have its own rent freeze, but the county's rent freeze only applies to those rent stabilized units within the unincorporated areas of the county. So that is most multifamily units that were initially occupied before February 1st of 1995. You can visit the LA County Register Recorder's website or the assessor's website or contact us at DCBA to find out if your property is rent stabilized. Additionally, landlords cannot harass or intimidate tenants that are choosing to exercise their rights under the moratorium. So by a board action on June 22nd, 2021, we did add a carve out to allow a landlord to evict tenants and members of their household in order to move into a single family home if certain conditions apply. I'm going to take my time because this is a lot of information. So again, all of these conditions have to be met in order for the landlord to proceed with an eviction action for a single family home. So the landlord had to purchase the home on or before June 30th of 2021. They purchased the home on July 1st of 2021. They cannot move forward with an eviction to move in. The property has to be a single family home as defined in the county's moratorium guidelines. That is defined as a standalone, detached residential unit separate from any other dwelling or structure. It also includes mobile homes and condominiums, but does not include accessory dwelling units, also known as ADUs or granny units. The landlord has to intend to use a single family home for their own principal residence or a qualifying family members for at least 36 consecutive months. Now, if you are the tenant occupying the home, you have to be current on your rent payments and not financially impacted by COVID-19. That means if you've submitted any kind of hardship declaration or have withheld rent because you're unable to, the landlord cannot move forward with an eviction to move in. The landlord or their family member moving into the home has to be similarly situated to the tenants that are being displaced. That means if you or anyone in your house is over 65 years of age, has a disability, or qualifies as low income, the landlord or their family member moving in has to meet those requirements as well. This is not a mix or match, it's a like for like. So if you are over 65, your landlord that is evicting you also has to be over 65. Additionally, the landlord has to give you at least 60 days notice, letting you know that they intend to move forward with an eviction to move in. And they have to give you additional time if any of the occupants moving in or out of the home have been diagnosed with COVID-19 within 14 days of that move out date. They have to give you extra time until all parties are no longer deemed to be infectious. And the landlord also has to provide you relocation assistance. So if the property is in unincorporated areas of the county or the jurisdiction where that property is located does not have relocation assistance, they have to give you that assistance defined in the county's rent stabilization ordinance. If you live in a city that has its own rental assistance, then you will be paid out those amounts. This is even if the ordinance of that city does not normally cover single family homes. While the emergency protections are in place, you are entitled to relocation assistance under those amounts. Now, I know that that was a lot of information, so I definitely encourage you to reach out to us, or you can go to dcba.lacounty.gov/no-evictions. That is our website that covers these protections, and you can also visit that to access the guidelines and all of the information that I just covered. So, no, the county's protections are not a cancellation of rent. So residential tenants and mobile home space renters will still have to repay your rental debt eventually. That was any time accumulated during these protections. So as mentioned earlier, where you live in the county will affect your repayment timeline. But if you're in unincorporated areas of the county, your repayment timeline will not begin before September 30th of 2021. LA County also established emergency protections for commercial tenants. And as I mentioned earlier, you have been afforded these protections since March 4th of 2020 because the state's protections only apply to residential tenants. So if you're a commercial tenant and you are unable to pay your rent due to a financial hardship related to COVID-19, that can serve as a defense if you're facing an eviction action. Additionally, landlords can't harass or intimidate you if you're choosing to exercise your rights under the moratorium. And as of July 1st of 2021, you had some additional protections that were afforded to you. So if you're a small business and you have less than 10 employees, your landlord has to provide you with a copy of your rights under the county's moratorium if within 10 days of issuing a notice of non-payment. A landlord is also prohibited from applying a payment to any other rental obligation except the current months unless you as a tenant agree to otherwise beforehand. And a landlord can't evict you if you're on a holdover or month-to-month lease. So During the emergency protection time period, any lease that was set to expire is actually extended through the end of the protections. So even if you're on a month-to-month lease, you're still protected and can use that in an eviction action. And a landlord is precluded from evicting a commercial tenant for failing to pay back rent under the terms of a repayment plan, but only if that commercial tenant has less than 10 employees. And I'm going to explain why in the next slide. So just as with residential tenants, commercial tenants do have to pay that rent back eventually. And there's two different repayment timelines depending on the size of your business. So if you're a commercial tenant with less than 10 employees, you will have 12 months after the end of the protections to repay that back rent. If you have between 9 and 100 employees, then you only have 6 months to repay that rent, and you must pay that back in 6 equal installments. That's why the previous protection against eviction for not paying rent under the terms of a repayment plan only applies if you have less than 10 employees. If you have more than 10, then the 6-month time period applies to you in those equal installments. You'll notice I don't mention commercial tenants with employees that have more than 100 employees. That's because they are not covered under the county's protection. So I've mentioned rent stabilization a little bit in the presentation. So unincorporated LA County has permanent rent stabilization, also known as rent control. Other cities within the county also have rent stabilization. And these are laws that affect when and by how much your rent can be increased, the reasons the tenants can be evicted. So when I mention no fault evictions or just cause, this is what this is referring to. And what happens if the landlord takes away an amenity. So if you previously had access to a parking space, laundry facilities, anything like that, and the landlord all of a sudden takes that privilege away from you, that could be a violation. So if you think any of these situations apply to you, that a landlord has unfairly increased your rent or is evicting you without a just cause or no fault reason, you can contact us at the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs and file a complaint, and we will look into that. Okay, so this is our contact information. So please feel free to reach out to us. We are here for tenants as well as property owners. So if you have questions or comments, feel like there's been a violation of the eviction protections or the rent stabilization ordinance, you can reach out to us by phone, email, or visiting our website. I'm going to be sticking around, so if you have questions specific to the LA County eviction protections, feel free to keep putting those in the Q&A and we will make sure to get to them. Thank you so much. I'm now going to pass it along to Gladys Acevedo. She works for the City of Los Angeles Housing Department. Thank you so much.
Hello. Thank you, Verdania. My name is Gladys. I work for the Los Angeles Housing Department, and I will be discussing the City of LA emergency tenant protections. The City of Los Angeles is presently in a local emergency period. It started on March 4th, 2020, and it is ongoing with no set end date. What that means is that while we are in this local emergency period, there's specific protections of which landlords currently are prohibited from moving forward to evict a tenant that is unable to pay rent if it's COVID related. Similarly, landlords are prohibited from moving forward to evict a tenant for unauthorized occupants, pets, or nuisance that's caused by COVID-19. Many children at home at this time, or maybe still doing Zoom through school, and noise is definitely an issue. If this nuisance is related to COVID, meaning noise levels typically, landlords are prohibited from moving forward with that eviction. A different provision of the emergency protections are the prohibition on landlords to move forward with a no-fault eviction. So that typically is owner occupancy. So if a tenant wants to evict a tenant, if a landlord wants to evict a tenant so that the owner can move in, at this particular point in time, that is not permitted. You cannot evict anyone to move in a resident manager or remove the property from the rental market. All of those are on hold. So if you receive an eviction notice of that sort, I encourage you to reach out to the housing department. Now, landlords may still try to evict, though, as Henry stated, there's many protections at this time. Landlords may still move to evict and may be successful, but you are encouraged to reach out to Stay Housed LA or to the housing department if you're at the initial eviction notice phase, so we can take a look at the reason for the eviction. Now, if a landlord does try to evict you, please note that they are required under city municipal code to issue a COVID-19 renter protections fact sheet. It has to be included with the notice, and it may be a defective service on its face if that is not provided. So we have multiple layers of protections in the City of LA that apply to all residential units. Those are the ones I mentioned earlier. And there's also specific protections that apply to units that are rent stabilized, what people commonly call rent control. And these are typically multi-dwelling units that were issued permission to be used for residential purposes on or before October 1st, 1978. So presently, if your unit is rent stabilized under City of LA RSO, the landlord cannot assess a rent increase. If you feel you have been issued a rent increase on a rent stabilized unit, please reach out to the housing department so we can get that corrected. Also, owners cannot charge interest or late fees on any unpaid rent at this time. And what is required is that you provide a declaration, you, the tenant that is unable to pay rent due to COVID impact, that you provide the declaration every month to the landlord indicating that you cannot pay. And if the landlord does not issue a 15-day notice, that you are proactive and you reach out to download that declaration and proactively issue that notice to the declaration rather to the landlord for any months that you are unable to pay rent, as it's related to COVID impact. Okay, so a common question is how long do the protections last? And as I stated earlier, there is no set end date. We know it began March 4th, 2020, and it's ongoing. What is important to understand is state law did provide an end date for repayment of any arrears or unpaid rent. So once the city lifts the emergency order, however, you will have a 12-month period to pay any rent that you owe the landlord. So it's important to know that there's an interplay there with state law and municipal code. So in that first bullet or arrow, it says, if you do not pay rent by May 1st, 2021, or, that or is quite important, by the end of 12 months after the city's local emergency period ends, whichever date comes first, then the landlord may move to evict for non-payment. So that's quite important. I know people want a definite date. We don't have one as of yet. So I encourage you that if you live in the city of Los Angeles, that you visit the LAHD website or that you subscribe to the mayor's page, as it will be heavily publicized when that local emergency period ends. And for Angelenos, it's 12 months from that period. But again, the state gave an end date. So that's May 1st, 2023. Whichever comes first. Okay, the city of Los Angeles has permanent rent stabilization. Again, what people commonly call rent control. Now that asterisk is there to indicate that not all units are covered. It's only specific units, again, multi-dwelling units that were issued a permit to be used for residential purposes October 1st, on or before October 1st, 1978. So this rent ordinance under Chapter 15 of the Municipal Code, it addresses how much the rent can be raised. As stated earlier, if you're under rent control, there's a rent freeze, but when that order is lifted, further analysis will have to be made on the protections. Another protection that's offered is specific reasons. There's only enumerated 14 reasons for a lawful eviction under the rent stabilization ordinance for the city of LA. And similarly, if there's a reduction of service, municipal code requires that we adjust the rent if the tenant is paying for a particular unit and those housing services have been reduced, we must adjust the rent. And if that's not done, it is a violation. And effectively, you are paying above the rent levels, which is a violation of the ordinance. If you feel there's been a violation, please file a complaint with the Los Angeles Housing Department. The allegation or the complaint filing will be assigned to an investigator who will review the allegation. And if a rent adjustment is required, we'll move forward with doing that up to and referral to the city attorney's office. Okay, this slide covers the allegations that we can review. The Los Angeles Housing Department has citywide offices that are equipped with investigators that can review allegations, including illegal rent increase, illegal evictions, failure to pay relocation assistance, as I stated earlier, reduction of housing services. Units for the city under the RSO are required to be registered with the City of Los Angeles, and a landlord cannot demand or collect rent if that registration has not taken place. So that is quite important and typically used as affirmative defenses for lawful detainers. So very important information to know. Failure to post RSO notification is another type of allegation. Illegal buyouts we're seeing as tactics utilized by landlords to try and negotiate buying a tenancy. But there's specific requirements under the rent ordinance, and our investigators will review it, ask for cancellations, and inform tenants that they're not required to accept if they choose not to. Lastly, we're reviewing rent payments where landlords are demanding exclusive payment online or electronic transfer. There's a certain segment of our constituent base that does not have the technology or desire to participate in this. That is illegal, cannot demand that as the exclusive payment. We will review those allegations as well. I do want to add one note that we have our new tenant harassment, the tenant anti-harassment ordinance that is effective August 6th of 2021, excuse me. It is providing multiple protections and a private right of action for Angelenos. If you have or you're experiencing harassment, rather, I encourage you to also file a complaint. It's incredibly new, but we are incorporating it as an allegation as well, as we want to keep track and refer out as necessary, including city attorney involvement if necessary, for any harassment tactics that certain unscrupulous landlords may be employing. Now, this last slide is just information for email inquiry. You can reach out to that first link 24 hours, 7 days a week, and the email inquiry will be reviewed by staff and you will receive a response. If you feel that you've experienced any of these violations or you rather want to make an allegation to determine if there was a violation, please reach out to our housing department to file a complaint. You can call the toll-free number, or you can reach us on that second link to file a complaint from home. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand this off to Salma.
Thank you, Gladys. So now we will answer the final question, which is, how can Stay Housed LA help me? I will be discussing some of the great resources Stay Housed LA provides to renters. Stay Housed LA provides renters with a variety of resources. We offer outreach, education, and legal services for tenants in need. We have free educational workshops every week and access to free to low-cost legal help. We also conduct larger community webinars like the one you are attending today. We also serve tenants that are low income and serve tenants regardless of their immigration status. One of the services we offer is free to very low cost legal services to renters. You should utilize these legal services if your landlord gave you a written notice to pay rent or quit, or a notice to quit based on a nuisance or breach of your lease agreement. You should also talk to a lawyer if your landlord harasses you to the point where it's impossible to live in your home. Some examples of landlord harassment Gladys alluded to or explained, but some examples could be if your landlord is taking away utilities, entering the unit without prior notice, not completing the necessary repairs, thus making your unit not safe or healthy. And there are many more forms of landlord harassment. So if you believe you are experiencing this, you should talk to a lawyer. You should also talk to a lawyer if you have an eviction lawsuit and received a summons and complaint. You should also talk to a lawyer if you have Section 8 or public housing and it is being terminated. If you believe you need to talk to a lawyer, you can request a legal referral at www.stayhousedla.org. Once you visit our website, you scroll down just a little to find the Get Legal Help button. After clicking on the button and filling out the form, a legal service provider from Stay Housed LA will get back to you as soon as they can. They will attempt to contact you 3 times by either phone, text, or email. Keep in mind that our attorneys prioritize cases by urgency. People with notices or summons will be contacted first. You have not secured an attorney until you have signed a written retainer. We want to make sure folks understand that you do not have an attorney officially representing you until you have signed a separate agreement, which is a retainer agreement. And Stay Housed LA partners with several community-based organizations that are incredibly knowledgeable on tenant protections, and they can provide an array of resources. You should talk to a community-based organization if you have general questions about the current protections. You can find us at one of our online educational workshops. You can also reach out to one of our community-based organizations if you need assistance filling out your declaration or rental assistance forms. You can also talk to one of us, community-based organizations, if you would like to get connected to other services that our organizations offer. Thank you all so much for listening and sitting through the presentation. I will now let Bill from Power take over the question and answer portion.
Thank you, Selma. And again, thank you to everyone who presented all that information. Right before we go into Q&A, which we'll do for a few minutes here at the end, I'm going to say a couple housekeeping things. First of all, for language justice, I want to call in what's been said in the chat. Thank you for participating in the webinar tonight. We've received a lot of requests for the slides. Please find a PDF of the slides that you can download here, and then there's a link. So that is the link that has all of the slides that we've shown you tonight, and you can download them. Also, again, just one more reminder, Stay Housed LA has workshops and clinics where we will be able to more intimately address individual questions that apply to your circumstance. So with that, we're going to try to answer at least some of the questions that we got tonight. And I believe we'll try to send responses to additional questions if you type them in and we don't have time to get to them. So please do type in your questions, even if we're not going to be able to get to them. So our first question is for Henry, I believe, which is, Henry, is it okay to backdate the declaration forms for each month and send them with the 25% of the past 3 months?
So if you missed a declaration for a month, it doesn't need to be backdated. You can simply check off the month that it's for and sign it and date it for when it was signed. It doesn't need to be backdated, and you will have until the end of September to pay that 25% of rent. And so as long as you've met that threshold of 25% of the total amount of rent that accrued from September 2020 through September of 2021, you cannot be evicted for the remaining 75%.
Thank you for that answer, Henry. And a sample declaration can be found at the Stay Housed LA website, stayhousedla.org. So I've got a couple questions for Jessica. Number one from Fred Ramirez is, will the financial assistance be taxed?
So no, well, it depends. So if you are a tenant or a household, that rental assistance is not taxable income. If you are a landlord and you receive assistance directly, that is taxable business income. That's why we require a W-9 for landlords who are starting an application. But households who receive assistance directly, that is not taxable income for those households.
Don't go anywhere, Jessica. We got one more question for you. If we applied for state help that covers 100% of the back rent, is the 25% still due before September 30th?
So your timing is going to be really important on that. We want to make sure that if you have applied for assistance and your landlord is aware that you have applied for assistance, and we have letters to help people make that notification, that you don't make payments while we are working on your application. It can make it very difficult for us to track how much we need to assist you with. So if you have an application and you are pending, you want to make sure that you process that. If you are unsure as to whether or not your application will be eligible, or if there is some other reason that you think your application may not be processed, then you'll want to get that 25% in. So you will need to make a decision based on your household circumstances to determine whether or not you should pay that 25%. The 25% will prevent you from being evicted, but we want to help households with as much assistance as possible because we know how impacted households have been during COVID. So if you've got an application pending, let your landlord know. We'll be working to get you assisted as quickly as we can.
Okay. And as please keep sending in your questions if you have any more. We do have a couple more minutes, but right now I want to ask a question, which is, what should we do if a tenant is I'm a tenant, so what should I do if I'm being harassed by my landlord? Henry, Salma, do you guys want to tag team that answer?
Sure. Landlord harassment of tenants is illegal. There are protections for tenants to avoid harassment, and harassment can take a lot of different forms. It can be threatening to shut off utilities. It can be hate speech. It can be all kinds of things. If you find if you believe you're experiencing harassment, I recommend reporting to a government agency. That can be either the Housing and Community Investment Department or the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs. And if it's egregious enough, then it's possible you might have an affirmative case against your landlord, which you can bring in court and try to get monetary damages for. But for something like that, I highly recommend seeking legal counsel first.
Salma, can folks also go to groups like Power and CES to deal with harassment issues?
Yes, they can talk to a community-based organization to learn a little bit more about their rights and protections. They can also attend one of our educational workshops and learn a little bit more about their own rights and protections.
Awesome. Yeah, and Stay Housed LA is a really cool partnership where no matter which pathway you come in, if we're able to help you at the community side, the government side, the legal services side, we're going to try to get you to the right folks to help you. So reach out. If you're in doubt, just reach out, go to stayhousedla.org. There's one last question I want to make sure I answer, which is a lot of folks have asked about, we've provided the link for the PDF of the language slides, but people are asking, are we still going to send a follow-up with the slideshow and the recording and all the languages? Yes, expect that early next week. Oh, one more question coming. I think this might have to be our last one. So question from Jessica, is there a deadline when all payments should go out? And would that be before September 30th? Gladys and Jessica, can you guys answer that?
Sure. So just real quick, There is no deadline to submit for the program. We're going to continue to make payments and make assistance to households for as long as we have funding, and we still have a lot of funding. So we are not at risk of running out of money in the near future. The program will be open after September 30th. So a household can ask for assistance after September 30th. We're going to continue to make payments. We will have households who submit in September and don't get their payment until October. And that's going to be okay, right? You'll have submitted your application, so you will get your tenant protections. There is no deadline yet in the application. However, if we do reach that point where we have run out of assistance, we will let folks know and we will be closing down the application at that time. That is not in the foreseeable future. So please get your application in. We want to make sure we can help.
Gladys, anything to add to that?
Yes, I just want to add that if you applied for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program through the City of Los Angeles and you've received notification that the application has been approved, then it will be paid by the city. So what we're asking is for continuous patience. We anticipate that payments will be going out in the next few weeks through the month of October. Now, the City of LA, just to add, does not require payment of 25% of the rent to be temporarily protected from evictions. Now, if you do pay the 25% of arrears, either through installments or lump sum through by September 30th of 2021, then there will be permanent eviction protections. But if you cannot, you're waiting for these payments, you receive a notice, you did not pay the 25%, landlords moving to evict. Highly encourage you, if you live in the City of LA, Angelenos, please come to the housing department at the eviction notice phase to file a complaint so we can get an investigator on that case immediately.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks again to all of our panelists. I am going to say one last gratuitous thank you to Neighborhood Legal Services, our legal services provider partner, CES, the LA Housing Department, or HCID, LAHD. We're in the process of remembering the right name, LA County Consumer and Business Affairs, and of course, the Office of Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, and to the entire Stay Housed team that helped bring this together. All of our interpreters, thank you guys all so much. Really very honored to help just facilitate this conversation. Again, go to stayhousedla.org, come to a workshop, come to a clinic if you need additional assistance. And one last thing, we have over 100 folks listening at this very moment. I think there may have been even more a bit earlier before we hit time. And that's what groups, especially like the community groups, are all about. We're here to help each other. Stay Housed LA is a unique and groundbreaking partnership. And all of you all are in this together with us. So we're here to help each other. You are not alone. Please share this information. If you know someone else who needs to know about this, please tell them. And thanks so much. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to sign off.